out to the market to buy vegetables and जो काम 50-100 रुपए में हो रहा था आज एक दिन के आप एक दिन मार्केट में चले जाइए और 500 रुपए यूं ही लग जाते हैं. So the farm, the produce has gone up, but the earnings of the farmer, what the farmer takes, is still the same last 20 years. But what has changed for a farmer is what has also changed for us here. But being here, we have many resources. आज आपके पास IT का job है, we have other alternatives we can avail of. But for a farmer, where his resource is only a piece of land, not a lot of gold jewelry, not some ancestral, heirloom, heirs, what do you call, virasat. But for that person, आज उसके बच्चे जो हैं उनको प्राइवेट स्कूल्स में जाना है, इंग्लिश मीडियम स्कूल्स में जाना है. आज उनको बर्थडे सेलिब्रेट करने जैसे शहरों में हो रहे हैं. आज उन्हें भी गैजेट्स के एस्पिरेशंस हैं. एंड at the same time, a lot of other lifestyle things have changed. कल पहले एक नॉर्मल यूनानी या आयुर्वेद या वैद्य के पास जाके इलाज हो जाता था, लेकिन आज गांव में छोटा सा नज़ला भी हो, कुछ भी हो, सर्दी जुकाम हो, तो अमूमन हर कोई अच्छे से अंग्रेजी डॉक्टर के पास जाना चाहता है. तो एक्सपेंसेस तो बढ़ गए हैं, लेकिन आज क्या उनके पास जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ हैं? बिल्कुल नहीं. ज़मीन वही है, लेकिन उसके ऊपर टू ऐड a little more complication here, we have climate change. पहले जैसे रहा नहीं है. We have this question of seeds. मतलब बहुत आसान है कहना कि हाइब्रिड सीड्स yield तो अच्छा दे रहा है, हाइब्रिड सीड्स ले लो. Everybody is going for hybrid seeds because it gives you really many times more yield than a desi seed variety. Of course, they go for it, but yet at the same time, it is also very prone to pest attacks and stuff. So you add to input cost by you having to use pesticides on it. In situations like that, where do you think our next generation farmer is going to come from?
My colleagues here have, but I've been going around the country and looking at what farmers groups, forest dwellers, fishing communities, etc. are doing, because this is not just agriculture as in farming, but also pastoralism. अलग अलग जगह पे जैसे nomadic pastoralism वगैरह है, fisheries है, और forest dependence भी है, तो इन सबको एक साथ देखना होगा. My experience is that yes, most places this is the dilemma that farmer communities are facing. I mean, all the ecosystem dependent communities are facing. Younger generation is not necessarily wanting to do the same work, plus there are all the difficulties that you mentioned. उसमें मुझे लगता है कि 2-3 बहुत important चीज़ें हैं. एक तो हमारा जो इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम है उसी को बहुत फंडामेंटल सवाल तो हमें पूछना ही पड़ेगा, क्योंकि ये एक इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम है जिसमें कि जो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट काम है जिसकी वजह से हम लोग सब जिंदा हैं, उसी को सबसे कम रेवेन्यूज या सबसे कम दाम मिलता है. Now we pay a high price in the market, but they get very low price. This is because of all the intermediaries. अगर आप जैसे कि इन्होंने पाटिल भाव ने कहा कि अगर आप डायरेक्टली फार्मर कंज्यूमर रिलेशनशिप बनाते हैं, and there are many examples of that in Pune, in Bangalore, in many places, then you find that as a consumer I can get good healthy food at reasonable price, and all that money can go straight to the farmer instead of going to middlemen, and mostly it's middlemen, not women. So that is something that the current economy will not promote, क्योंकि फिर उसमें इन लोगों का पैसा नहीं बनेगा, तो वो हमें तोड़ना पड़ेगा. दूसरा है कि सब्सिडीज जो हैं, आज शायद हमारे पास आई थिंक 100,000 crore rupees सब्सिडी टू केमिकल फर्टिलाइजर. ऑर्गेनिक में बहुत कम सब्सिडी है, इफ एनी एट ऑल. 2-3 स्टेट्स में अभी कर रहे हैं, बट जनरली नहीं है. तो हम तो कितने सालों से बोल रहे हैं कि अगर आप ये 100,000 crore rupees सब्सिडी अगर ऑर्गेनिक की तरफ डालते हैं, that will change the economics of the production of organic completely, and you'll be able to actually, the farmers will be able to get a better price and consumers will be able to get good healthy organic food without having to pay through the nose. आज अगर आप organic farm shops में जाएंगे पुणे में, it's only rich people like us who can afford it. Poor people are having to eat junk in cities. क्योंकि junk is cheaper. तो ये एक पूरा, I mean economics I can go on, but there are some of these fundamental issues of the macroeconomic situation which have to be challenged. दूसरा है कि हाँ, लोगों के aspirations change हुए हैं, and of course they would, because people like us use all the gadgets and do all the stuff in our cities. So that is what the younger generation in villages will also aspire to. तो उसमें हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि आपके पास टेलीविजन नहीं होना चाहिए, आपके पास ये नहीं होना चाहिए, that we can, unless we ourselves change. That is also a very important change, that how do the lifestyles of the cities of people like us change, so that in fact this doesn't become an aspirational thing for everybody else. But apart from that, there is a need for money. तो उसमें मैंने देखा है कि जैसे कि हम लोगों ने कई जगह पे काम किया है जहाँ पे the younger farmers, the younger generation is doing a hybrid system, कि वो कुछ ट्रेडिशनल भी कंटिन्यू कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उसमें कुछ प्रोड्यूस ऐसा बना रहे हैं जो मार्केट में अच्छी तरह से बिक सकता है, उससे रेवेन्यूज बढ़ते हैं. वो जब रेवेन्यूज बढ़ते हैं, एंड दे यूज आल्सो न्यू टेक्नोलॉजीज टू गेट देयर प्रोड्यूस अक्रॉस टू मार्केट्स एक्सेट्रा, एज फार एज पॉसिबल लोकल मार्केट्स, पर लोकल नहीं तो कम से कम मतलब विद इन इंडिया और आउटसाइड आल्सो, दैट क्रिएट्स एन इंसेंटिव फॉर द यंगर जनरेशन टू स्टे ऑन. लेट मी गिव यू अ सिंपल एग्जांपल. Ladakh में there is a woman farmer who went back to her village and is doing mushroom cultivation, apart from also barley and whatever the traditional crops are. वो मशरूम अब लेह में और बाकी जगह पे अच्छी तरह बिक रहा है, and she says that I have no need to leave the village because I'm getting this good revenue and I'm staying with my family, I'm staying in a clean environment, unlike Leh which is becoming very polluted etc. तो ये जो एक मिक्स है, हाइब्रिड सिस्टम जो है of technologies, knowledge and both local consumption and market. Let me give you another example. 5,000 Dalit women farmers in Telangana, part of the Deccan Development Society, many of you would have heard of it. आप शायद विजिट किए हैं. उनका है कि we will produce both for home and the market, लेकिन प्रिंसिपल हमारा ये होगा कि first priority is the home. तो जितने भी वो मिलेट्स या लोकल राइस वेराइटीज वगैरह उगाते हैं, सबसे पहला कंजम्पशन उनके घर पे है, फिर जो सरप्लस है, and they are producing surplus even though it is dryland farming, local seeds, no chemicals, nothing. There's a woman called Vinodamma who I went visited in 2019 जब drought year था, 30% less rainfall than normal. उनके 2.5 एकड़ फार्म पे वो 10 लोगों के परिवार के लिए पूरे साल के लिए उगा रही थी, 40 प्रकार के क्रॉप्स उगा रही थी, मिलेट्स वगैरह वगैरह, and she was selling for 2 lakh, she had surplus to sell for 2 lakh rupees into the market at a labor cost of 30,000 rupees. Now that is economics, and that is not just economics, it's also ecology, because she says until I respect the earth I will not get this, until the seed is not sacred, which is what Vandana keeps talking about, I will not get this, and until the consumer is also sacred and respected, I won't have this incentive. So ये जो by the way I also asked, because we should not only be talking about human beings, right? उनके फार्म पे parakeets, sometimes wild pigs will come and eat some crops. मैंने कहा ये तो आपका डैमेज हो रहा है, तो आप उनके खिलाफ कुछ करते नहीं है क्या? She said no, I'm taking from nature, nature is taking from me. उनका भी तो भाग बनता है इसमें. Over and above all of that, she's feeding 10 people and giving to the market. पर उसमें फिर ये है कि वो एक हाइब्रिड सिस्टम क्रिएट हो गया है. वहाँ का कृषि विज्ञान केंद्र जो है, मे बी दी ओनली कृषि विज्ञान केंद्र इन इंडिया, आई थिंक नाउ यू मेंशन चित्रकूट में एक और है, 2 हैं, which are run jointly by the scientists appointed by farmers and these Dalit women farmers. That is the kind of change we need if we want this next generation of farmers to also have the incentive to continue growing. And the third crucial element there is non-farm incomes. So in so many of these places which I've seen, people have actually started doing either agro-based production, like squashes and things like that, and or things like homestays. So community-led ecotourism, not the fake ecotourism which otherwise is promoted, but actual genuine community-led ecotourism in which you go and you stay with the family, you eat the local food, they have, like in Munsiari, Mati Sangatna has worked with 40 women to create these things, and they take you into the forest. They have become nature guides, but they're not displacing their own occupation because of this. उनका farming भी continue हो रहा है और टूरिस्ट उसको एंजॉय कर रहे हैं और साथ में ये होम स्टेज भी हैं. It has meant that income from farms but also income from non-farm produce. ये जो हाइब्रिड सिस्टम्स हमें क्रिएट करने पड़ेंगे, असल में सेल्फ रिलायंस की तरफ जाना है तो गवर्नमेंट नीड्स टू सपोर्ट दीज सॉर्ट्स ऑफ सिस्टम्स व्हिच अनफॉर्चुनेटली ज़्यादातर जगह पे नहीं हो रहा है. तो आई थिंक I mean these are some of the answers. They're still marginal, still very few places, but they show us the possibility of this kind of transformation. And finally, इस सब को देखते हुए people from the IT sector are going into agriculture. मतलब 8-10 साल यूं यूं बैठे बैठे तंग हो गए, उसके बाद अब कह रहे हैं यार ये तो सब छोड़ो, अब हमें जाके फार्म पे कुछ लैंड पे कुछ करना है. तो लेकिन इसमें एक डर ये है, डेंजर ये है कि वो फिर किसी और फार्मर का जाके लैंड ले लेंगे और फिर खुद फार्मर बनेंगे. इंस्टेड ऑफ दैट वी शुड फाइंड वेज बाय व्हिच देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ अदर लैंड अवेलेबल or work with the farmers to create these collective and joint systems in which an IT person and a farmer can actually work together to make the change that is needed. And then you'll see the younger generation getting really interested.
Yeah, not just in the rural areas, a younger generation in the cities as well, where a family. There were times when people, the first generation movers from village to the cities, would still go back during harvest season and help the families back home in the villages, take their chutti from offices, go back, do their bit of contribution of farming, and come home with their homegrown rice or homegrown grains. But then that tradition continued. The same thing that can, as city dwellers, we can choose where we can take our kids, to farms and choose a farmer and say that, can we come when your harvesting is done and can we work on your farms? And that way, if not this IT working generation, but maybe the next generation will be ready and up for farming.
This actually reminds me, if I could just take a minute more, during COVID, so many people who were working in cities went back to the villages. Yeah. Many of them did not want to come back to the cities क्योंकि उनको मालूम था कि वो same insecure, undignified job जो है उसमें वापस आना है. लेकिन गांव में फिर options हैं या नहीं, ये बहुत बड़ा सवाल था. So where there were options, but I'll give you an example. Northeast Network is a women's network in working in Northeast India, especially Nagaland and so on. उन्होंने फिर जो वापस आ गए थे यूथ, उनके साथ काम किया, and many of the young people have actually now stayed back. They haven't gone back to the cities because they have found occupations which link them to the local agriculture, shifting cultivation or other kind of agriculture with other jobs that they can do from the villages themselves. Now, if we had a network across India which could provide these options, imagine that there would be maybe hundreds of thousands of people who went back and would have stayed back in the villages or in the small towns. So actually last year we started something called Vikalp Sutra, which is a network of this kind, learning from each other to create these kind of opportunities for people who don't want to come back into these completely insecure, undignified jobs. उनको गांव में अगर dignity मिलती है, safe अच्छा income मिलता है, safe environment मिलता है, family के साथ रह सकते हैं आप, plus if you also improve the health and education facilities in the villages, then that's the kind of future we need to look for. And there are examples already of this.
Yeah. So can you, just elaborate a little bit about how Vikalp Sutra works, so that people here, some of us can participate.
So there are two processes. Vikalp Sutra itself emerged from something called Vikalp Sangam, which started in 2014. So the idea is कि जिस तरह का बहुत बढ़िया काम हमारे दो साथी कर रहे हैं और उस तरह के मतलब हजारों लोग हैं भारत भर में, individuals but also organizations. There is no platform linking all of us together. And not just working on agriculture, on education, on health, on conservation, on gender equality, on disability, all the different fields that we can think of, because they're all interconnected, no, at the end of the day. तो इन पे जो काम कर रहे हैं लोग, अच्छा जो काम कर रहे हैं, showing alternatives to bring them together. So that is the Vikalp Sangam network, and we have gatherings in various parts of India. We've done about almost 30 gatherings of this kind, bringing people together to share, collaborate, do more collective actions together, learn from each other, and also do policy advocacy when it's needed. तो इसमें से उभर के ये विकल्प सूत्र आया है. तो सूत्र basically works on three fronts. One is a knowledge repository, कि कहाँ पे डिग्निफाइड लाइवलीहुड्स का काम ऑलरेडी हो रहा है, कौन सी संगठन संस्थाएं कर रही हैं और उसमें से हम क्या सीख सकते हैं। सेकंड इज अ डायलॉग प्रोसेस कि एक दूसरे से सीखना। अभी तो 2 साल कोविड की वजह से ऑनलाइन था, बट नाउ फिजिकल डायलॉग विल ऑल्सो स्टार्ट। कि जैसे कि मान लीजिए पाटिल भाव कर रहे हैं, तो उनसे सीखने के लिए कहीं और से किसी और को अगर सीखना है तो एक डायलॉग प्रोसेस, या कोई और कुछ इसी तरह का सिमिलर काम कर रहे हैं बट देयर आर सम क्रॉस लर्निंग्स टू बी डन, सो देयर इज अ डायलॉग प्रोसेस। एंड द थर्ड इज समथिंग कॉल्ड अ हेल्पलाइन, विकल्प वाणी। तो हेल्पलाइन का क्या है कि एक नंबर हम देते हैं और उस नंबर को कॉल, अगर किसी लेबरर या किसी वर्कर या किसी को कुछ ज़रूरत है, लाइक आई एम लुकिंग फॉर अ different job, or I have this, during COVID of course it was also health emergencies and so on, then they call that number and there is a kind of a facility to connect them up with the relevant people so that they can get help. So far it's only, this helpline thing is only in 2 or 3 parts of India because it's a very complicated process, but we're hoping that it picks up and expands in more and more areas, so that the whole idea of, and also to create a template of what is a dignified livelihood. No, it's not just a livelihood. I mean, आज हमारी सरकार को देखेंगे कि जॉब क्रिएशन जॉब क्रिएशन जॉब क्रिएशन, पर किस तरह के जॉब्स जिसमें कुछ तो मतलब एक सेल्फ एस्टीम है, कुछ क्रिएटिविटी है, कुछ डिग्निटी जैसे हम बोलते हैं, which includes all of this thing. So to create a template of what is a dignified livelihood and then to promote that also. For instance, if there's a Bharat Livelihood Mission or any other such thing, या NREGS है, तो उसमें हम डिग्निटी को भी कैसे बढ़ा सकते हैं, लोगों की सेल्फ एस्टीम और सेल्फ रिलायंस को कैसे बढ़ा सकते हैं, एक तरह का टेम्पलेट वो भी विकल्प सूत्र से कर रहा है।
तो एक फैक्ट है कि आप शहर छोड़कर जब गांव जाते हैं तो आप अपने गांव में जा रहे हैं, घर में बैठ रहे हैं, you see a lot of youth, languishing in their houses, watching mobiles and televisions. Um, and really, there is a dearth of jobs there. Dearth of alternative jobs, jobs that are dignified again. They don't want to go back to farms. They don't want, if some of them don't want to come to cities, then very few jobs opportunities in the villages, and that is a fact. Another thing is that this whole exercise, these documentaries were not just about food, were not just about how we as individuals and our choices are going to define uh, our times, are going to shape the world we live in, especially for our future, for our children. This also is about conscious consumerism. Um, in the first movie, it talks about how there are so many, emotions we can choose from, shop from, but how, look at those two people, they chose joy as the underlying theme of their life. The same way as consumers, can we be more conscious? And this is something that Vasudha Dai works with, because she is not just getting up and walking into farms and talking to farmers, but she's also coming onto the other side and interacting with consumers like us and creating awareness. Because unless all of us wake up and know what the situation is, we're not going to really act on it. We're not going to really move towards it. So that is the first step, about being aware. And Vasudha Dai has been doing that groundbreaking work, that legwork. So please give us insight into how. सॉरी मी मराठीत बोलते त्यामुळे ज्यांच्या